What's up, guys? My name is Khan, and today we're back with more Gearblocks, and I wanted to spend some time in this episode building ourselves a chassis and start looking at individual components and more specifically how they will affect the overall build of a vehicle. So I want to start with a basic chassis that's not even going to have suspension. It's just going to have some basic steering setup. It'll be parallel steering, and we'll put ourselves a simple drive on it. And what I want to do today is look at two things. One, how a differential affects that chassis on the rear drive wheels, and two, how a centrifugal clutch helps smooth the input. In the last episode, we looked at all the new update parts, which include clutches and brakes, and it's super exciting, as well as clutch gears, which is going to allow us to make better transmissions. And I wanted to actually start working on a chassis piece by piece, and each episode will go through a new part of the chassis, like front suspension, rear suspension, stuff like that, camber angles, toe angles, you know, and we can look more specifically how each of those affects our vehicle in a gearbox sense, and then of course design the ultimate vehicle. So the first thing we're just going to do is we're just going to get rid of this, and we're going to try and build ourselves a basic frame setup here, and then just run some laps and then compare some things. In the last video, I sort of made a mistake. I was talking about, we were talking about centrifugal clutches because they did add a centrifugal clutch to the game, which is really more of an input smoother, and I of course confused it with a CVT, a continuously variable transmission, which is a device that expands a pulley with centripetal force as well, and that changes the ratio of front to back. I'll throw a picture up on the screen. Today we're just gonna look at, you know, what a centrifugal clutch can actually do for us, which is gonna be kind of cool because this game has a lot of electric motors. It doesn't have gas motors, and so the electric motor, when it stops delivering power, the clutch is just not gonna instantly stop right away, which it'll be cool. Once we put the centrifugal clutch on, I'm 99% sure we're also going to have to put brakes after the clutch because we're not going to be able to stop the vehicle if we don't. But either way, let's take a look. We're going to start getting into this build right away. So let's start by just building ourselves a basic frame of a car. Now, I don't really know how big dimensionally this needs to be. So we're just going to start with something that's like, you know, 19 blocks long, or wide, I mean, and then we'll extend these out to the maximum. I believe it's 25. You know what? Let's actually put these frame pieces there on the outside. That's perfect. We'll do that, and then we'll extend this out to 25, and then of course we'll just duplicate this and build it on the other side. We're not going to build anything super fancy. You know, the car is going to evolve as we come up with more and more ideas. I think the next thing I want to do after we look at clutches is of course look at the front suspension geometry and what we can do with front suspension geometry that really changes the vehicle design. But of course, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below, and it'll be exciting to try something out. So there's a frame compared to the size of our dude. Seems all right. So now we're gonna have to build ourselves a little bit of a front suspension sort of setup. I'm just gonna do something really, really basic here. We're gonna take this, move that way up there, and just put, I don't know, something like down in 3 blocks, like that. And then we grab this, we flip this, and I sort of know that certain parts exist which kind of make this easy. Again, this is going to be static. There's not going to be any suspension, so it's probably going to suck a lot. But the go-kart doesn't have suspension either. And then we're going to grab ourselves one of... I don't know where all the parts are just yet. Here we go, the control arms. So I want to use one of these. I'm going to use a steering arm 2-axle with a linkage. Look, we put that in there. That can be our pivot point. And then all we have to do is push this top point, and we're good to go. We'll grab another one of these, put it over here, and same thing, pivot that. So for this, I'm just gonna use like, I don't know, probably a 5 wide rack is enough. We can do this, and then we can actually make this just a sliding joint. It's kind of cool that this works. It stays on top of that piece, but it's allowed to slide back and forth, so we don't have to actually do anything to constrain this other than that, and it won't just magically disappear, which is sort of neat. And then we need another piece here. We need a ball connector like this. Put that there. It's kind of amazing. I really like the building in this game. Super, super fun. Something like that. Perfect. And then we need to connect those up with some of these socket and axle pieces. And we can just sort of snap that to there. Done. And then we can extend this out like that, and then we duplicate this, and there we go, and that's our steering setup. Perfect. Oh, of course, now we actually have to, you know, put a motor to drive this whole thing. I love building in this game, I really do. It's like, you know, once you get used to which controls do what, the scaling and stuff, being able to move parts around is so convenient. You just kind of click and drag and everything just moves, and it's super, super fun. Like, I really, really enjoy it. All right, so there we go. We've got our steering motor set up. So now we'll just program this thing. Let's do forward key F, reverse key H. We'll do TGFH to drive the car. Max RPM, max forward angle. Let's try 180. Max RPM 100. Yeah, sure, it doesn't matter. Max torque. We can crank that to max as well. Now remember, it might be stupid. It seems like you're like, oh, well, 180, but that only means this rotates 180 degrees like this gear does. That's not the actual angle that our steering gets to, right? Because the gear has to move across these teeth, and then that determines the angle. So it won't actually be, you know, 180 degrees of steering. It'll probably be more like 30 degrees of steering or something. We're gonna put more axles, of course. We need an axle on each of these to hold our front wheels. I don't really know if I need the axle that far out, but, you know, whatever. We'll put a little space on it. There we go, done. Do I have that rotating? I do. I'll leave that as static, actually. We'll have the wheel rotate on the axle rather than the axle rotate on the steering joint. See, this kind of stuff is cool, but now if we wanted brakes, well, I guess we could mount brakes there, and then they'd have to attach to this beam, and then we could have a brake set up that grips off this. Anyway, it doesn't matter. We don't have front brakes. It's fine. We're not going to have front brakes. Let's put some tires on this. We're not going to do anything crazy with the tires. Let's just put a car wheel on it. 2x8 car wheel, right? We are making a car. That looks fine. Something like that. Perfect. And then we'll just duplicate this, flip it on the other side. Done. And attach that. All right, so now if we put a battery down, we can check that our steering works. All right, done. Unfrozen. So now F, oh, rotates that way. And G, that's actually pretty good. That's awesome. Does it go right to the limits of the... Yeah, pretty much right to the limits. It's pretty good steering angle, though, to be honest. You can see the ball joints, like these little axles, as you push further along the steering, they sort of change their geometry a little bit. You know, they get, like, they slope inwards, which is nice that we could do this ball setup. This works great. Could have, I think that's the limit of the servo. I don't think it's getting stuck on the edge of the gears. No. Yeah, it still has room to move. That's perfect. All right, that's perfect. So let's just flip the controls of this around. Let's just grab a tire here, slap that on. Perfect. Another one. And now our wheelbase is even front to back. I don't know how much it would affect the overall driving performance with the wheelbase being slightly narrower or slightly wider. You know, obviously with RC cars, it affects it. You know, it makes big difference, your wheelbase, your length of your wheelbase, not only, and your width of your wheelbase as well, when we do RC drifting. So it'd be interesting to see how much this affects it. That looks good. I think I can push this. Perfect. And we can steer. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. All right, nice. Oh, apparently I can't change these connection points on the diff. Even though the axles come into the diff here, it won't let me actually change these to be a non... That sucks. All right, so I guess we can't do that just yet. We gotta actually put this and connect it. And then I think I have to put this with a half block in between to get this to mesh. So the diff is a 32 spur gear, so we need a 32 spur gear to match. So we'll do one of these. Yeah, like so. And then in order to get that to mesh with this, I need a half block. So let's just steal one of these. There we go. And grab this, rotate it there. Make that smaller. Put this on the half block. Like that. And then put this in there. And then this is now meshing correctly. Perfect. Now we can extend these axles out. We're good to go. So this can connect to there. And we can just put an offset axle attachment majumner guy. There we go. Done. All right, perfect. So now we can replace this with a differential, and it'll all fit the same geometry, and really that'll give us a good comparison between a differential and a non-differential setup. So now the last thing we got to do is just take this, turn this motor on, give it controls. Forward will be T, reverse will be G, max RPM 2000. It's a 1-to-1 ratio, so it'll be 2000 on the axle. Peak torque and max braking torque will crank both of those up, and good to go. All right, that's it. Everything is set. It's wonderful. Let's actually reduce this back a whole bunch, because we are going to need, there we go, and then we'll just reconnect this axle into there. Done. We're going to need space in here to do transmissions, centrifugal clutches, all that sort of fun stuff. So now the final thing we need to do is just put a seat on it, and actually we can change this so player only has control when seated. Done. And let's do it on this one as well. All right, so we're in. Let's check our steering. F turns left, H turns right, and of course my forward reverse is backwards, but that's okay. So let's just freeze this guy up, and let's just customize this. Let's just invert direction rather than keep these keys different. We can just invert the direction, shouldn't make a difference. And let's of course save this whole thing. So first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna run a lap with this, see what it can do. It's not super quick, but it's actually pretty stable, all things considered. Oh, it cannot slow down to save its life. That is a very small motor. But yeah, it's not super quick, but like all things considered, it's pretty good. You know, it's got a decent turning radius. You know, and it gets decent grip. But again, we've got a fixed axle on here. We have no centrifugal clutch. So this is the first step of the whole chassis build process. So we've got this. Now we're gonna just run a lap. And I know it's not gonna be great because obviously, you know, me running laps, there's a lot of inconsistency with how I actually drive. But we're gonna run a lap, see how it goes, and then we're gonna take the car apart a little bit and do some changes. First thing we're gonna do, obviously, is put a differential on the back. So here we go. Let's actually run a couple laps just to make sure, you know, we get some decent numbers. I'm gonna slow down here. Oh my God, it cannot slow down to save its life. There we go. It is very underslidey. Very, very underslidey. I haven't adjusted the torque values on the tires. There's friction adjustments we can do on the tires. Overall, it's not bad. It's just really underslidey, which, I mean, we could crank up, I guess, a little bit of the friction on the front if we had to. But again, default settings, probably the best way to really understand the differences between parts. I'm hoping we see a significant difference with the differential. But overall, I mean, this is so much smoother than my go-kart. It's just not going to put down sub 1 minute times. It's not bad. It actually works pretty decent. Why does it feel like that back right tire is pushed out more? Probably because it is. 122, by the way, was the lap time. What? No, what the heck? Oh, this one's not out far enough. Oh, okay, no problem. I'll fix it. All right, so I know we were driving with an uneven wheelbase there. I guess I should do one more lap to kind of prove that it's like, you know, it's not that big a deal. I can kind of do that. I'm gonna actually start doing every lap too from a cold start, from a 0, rather than from like an increased speed start. Because I feel like it's just more realistic. If we go from a 0, you know, full acceleration, we can actually see any sort of changes with like a transmission and gearing and stuff like that. So here we go. Let's just do a 0 lap start. The wheels are now even width. I don't really think it was too big a deal. I mean, it was 1 block off on the 1 tire. It might have made a difference, you know. Slow down into this. There we go. Again, not exactly the greatest tests in the world. We could do more realistic tests, like just like flat up static turning radius tests, or, you know, 0 to 60 in a straight line, stuff like that, which we'll definitely have to do at some point in time. But for now, I really want to, you know, sort of test a car under some relative driving conditions. It is so bad without a rear differential, though. Oh my God, like we need a differential really bad. We're gonna do a full open diff too, because that's really the ultimate comparison. This would be essentially a full locked diff, right? Like both rear wheels are gonna spin at the same speed no matter what. There's no way they can spin at different speeds because they're connected to one straight axle that connects the two of them. The diff allows the two axles to spin at different speeds depending on loads, so the inside one should spin less when we go around a corner, which of course allows us to take a corner smoother. And of course, both front wheels are completely independent. They just spin however the heck they want, so it's essentially like they have a full open diff no matter what, because the axles are completely independent. Anyway, it's not going to be a 122. We didn't have any speed going into it, but it should be a good time. Decent enough, good enough check. 125.699, perfect. Let's reset and make some changes. All right, so we take our diff. We're gonna mount it like that horizontally. We need this axle to come out one more, like so, into the diff case, and this one, same deal. And then we need to get 3 bevel gears, which I think are the low 2s. There we go, like that. Perfect. All right, so now we can take our differential settings, turn on our diff, take the differential settings, slip limit strength 0. Completely open differential. Why is there a control key for the diff? That's interesting. You can control the diff? Can I, like, turn it on and off from slip to non-slip? That might be what this is. That's kind of cool. So now we've got a full open diff, which means our inside wheel can turn completely independent of our outside wheel. And as we drive around corners, the inside wheel should turn less because it's on a shorter radius, which should, you know, make it actually drive a little bit smoother around the corners without understeer. So we're gonna line up here and we're gonna see if we can do a better lap than like a 130. I don't know if it's gonna make much of a difference, but you know, we should be able to feel something coming into the corners. So here we go. Let's just start going right away. And again, the overall gear ratio of the vehicle hasn't changed at all. We're still just a 1-to-1 with the motor. But we should have better steering control. Oh my, oh, it's so drifty. Whoa. Whoa, it doesn't slide at all. It grips up and drifts. Not to mention, oh my goodness, the turning is so much better. It's like, you can still feel a little bit of the understeer. You can see the front kind of sliding, but it is so much better. But it drifts under braking. If you brake too hard, I guess that makes sense because the wheels aren't locking properly. They're not both locking with the same amount of torque. The lock is happening to the axle, but then that actually has to go through the differential. So the wheels aren't necessarily going to slow down at the exact same rate. That's kind of neat. We actually do need brakes on the axles rather than brakes on the motor itself. This is really cool though. It's so much faster. Like, wow. The turning is just so much easier. But it's still a little rough. Definitely need some brakes on the axles though. All right, this is gonna be way faster. This is gonna even beat the 122, I think. And this is from a dead stop, or a dead start. That was good, 117. All right, we're gonna go back to the start. We're gonna do another lap, and oh my god, yeah, it just cannot stop. Wow. This time I'm gonna press 6 and turn on the diff. I don't know what that actually does, so I turned on the diff. I don't know if it doesn't seem to have done anything. I didn't put any diff strength on though. So it probably doesn't do anything unless you actually have like a strength value. Yeah, no, we're still slidey McGee when we go to brake. That's crazy. It's because the wheels don't brake at even amounts. We're not braking any on the front because it's only braking through the drive motor. And the back wheels, they're not gonna brake evenly because the load will be different as you turn. And so since the load is different on each wheel, you get an uneven braking force, and we spin, which is kind of hilarious. So it means we definitely 100% need disc brakes on both the front and back axles. Yeah, I pressed 6. 6 is on the differential gear. It doesn't seem to make a difference. It still feels like we just have a completely open diff. I'm gonna set the diff and see maybe if that'll make a difference. Honestly though, this is like the smoothest vehicle I've ever driven in Gearblocks so far. It's kind of crazy. It's very controllable. I do have like the destruction turned on as well, and it doesn't even matter. It's just really easy control. This is not going to be a faster lap. Let's see, 6. Yeah, it doesn't seem to make a difference if I turn it on and off. So let's just stop here. Yeah, perfect. And let's just adjust the force on the diff here. All right, we'll set the diff to 10, and it's still set to 6 with key toggles. Player only has control while seated, sure. So let's see what happens if we do this now. So if I go forward, this feels pretty normal. If I press 6, I just press 6, does it like lock? I think that might lock it, right? Like it activates the... Yeah, this feels locked because I'm not... Oh, I'm sliding a little bit. Press 6 again. I honestly don't know what that does. It doesn't seem to make a difference. Like now it still feels like we have a diff, but it's not great. It feels really stiff. It's almost back to being the understeery thing it was when it was a locked axle. Yeah, it's really understeery now. But I don't understand what toggling the gear does on the differential. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put brakes on this rear axle, and then we're gonna put a centrifugal clutch on it. So let's get some disc brakes, little small guys, not really a big deal. We can just attach them to like that. Look at that, it's perfect. Attaches right to the frame. And then of course we gotta set the keys for this. We'll turn it on, we'll set the keys. Player only has control while seated. Control key will be down S, or not down S, down G. So when we hold G to go like reverse, I guess, it'll also apply the brakes. Peak torque 800, sure, that is fine. There's gonna be 2 brakes, so it's actually like double that. It'll be 1600 total because it's combining the 2. So now we have brakes on this thing. Oh, wait. No, now I can't go in reverse. That's right. Hold on a minute. I should put brakes as G, and then I should change the control of this. Reverse should be like B, so you have to go even further backwards. There we go. So G is brakes, B is reverse, and then we can press brakes. That's awesome. Just locks that rear wheel. Look at that. Much more braking power, though. And now our brakes are set offset from the differential. All right, so let's see if we can do a lap here. And, of course, we're actually going to probably just slide right out, but let's see what happens. Full speed ahead. And then, of course, we're going to put a centrifugal clutch between the motor and the drive gear, the crown gear there, and see how that makes the difference. So, again, full open diff. Locking those rear tires. Awesome. That's actually crazy. So much more braking power. Because now we're stopping it at the wheels and not, like, letting it go through the diff. It's actually crazy how much that makes your braking power better. You gotta be careful not to lock the rear tires too much, though. But you just kind of, like, tap the brakes once. That's so cool. I love this so much. It's so interesting what you can do now. Oh, man. Oh, jeez. Oh, Lord. That was what happens when you, like, I basically pulled the e-brake. You could make a crazy drift car, too. We can make a drift car, and I don't know what we can do in terms of automatic gyro countersteer, but there are velocity sensors. I don't know if they work in, like, you know, the individual directions, but on RC cars, we have, like, a drift gyro, right, which helps with the countersteering. So there might be a way to do something like that in Gearblocks. I'm not exactly sure. Either way, it'd be something cool to experiment with. But essentially, we made an e-brake for the back of this car, and it's pretty good. Nice. Nice. A 1:17.9. A very similar time to what we had before. All right, so the last thing I want to do to this build is I just want to put a centrifugal clutch in between these two connection points. So we're going to grab this axle, and we're just going to scale it back out. And we're going to grab another axle and put that in there. And theoretically, what this should do is it should smooth our inputs. So it should take our input coming from our motor, and then because the clutch doesn't apply all the power directly, like it has to spin up to speed before it transmits the power through the axle, this should theoretically make our inputs a little bit smoother when we, like, let off the throttle. So when we let off the throttle, this axle is going to slow down very, very quickly because it's connected directly to the motor, which is going to start applying the braking torque. But this axle should keep spinning because the centrifugal clutch is in the middle, and it's, you know, it's allowing this to spin independently of this for a little bit. So we'll see how that goes, and then, of course, we still have the brakes on the back. We do have to connect this with a little, you know, a 180 piece, whatever, it doesn't matter. Something like that. There we go. And for our clutch settings, I'm just going to honestly leave this engaged at 1,000 RPM. Wait, it's fully engaged at 1,000. Our peak RPM is 2. So let's say this is fully engaged at 2,000 RPM and disengaged at RPM 500. It's fully disengaged at 500 RPM, so our motor has to get up to 500 before... Let's do that even lower to 100. We want some immediate response time. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of settings you could play with all these things and really figure it out. But let's resave this as test chassis. Now we have a centrifugal clutch, we've got a differential, and we've got brakes. So let's see how this affects our driving. Brake G and brake G. There we go. That's fine. Okay. That's okay. It's kind of interesting. If I tap W, it's got like a little bit of a slower acceleration profile now, which is exactly what you would expect. But here we go. Full speed ahead. It's like much, much slower in terms of acceleration. But now, if we let off the throttle, yeah, it keeps the wheels spinning on the drive axle. Oh, it's so much smoother with the centrifugal clutch when you're accelerating out of the corner. You don't feel like you have this immediate burst of speed. It's actually like a controlled acceleration. And we could play with that too by adjusting the torque settings of the clutch. Yeah, it's a much more controlled acceleration. It's much slower. We need a much more aggressive clutch to accelerate a lot faster. But this is super cool. It feels like once you get your angle on your corner, you can just kind of hammer the throttle, and I can hold W, and it's almost like input smoothing the keyboard inputs, which I know there's settings for that too, and we could use a joystick with a variable throttle as well. Like I could use a controller that has a trigger and use that throttle as well and make it a little bit different. But this is wicked cool how much this makes a difference. It's slower to get going off the line. Like when you want to accelerate, it's much, much slower, but it's just so much smoother through the corners. I don't think this is going to be a faster lap though than the 117s. Yeah, it's almost the same. 118s. It just feels so much better though. Oh, yeah, no, you can't lock up the rear tire. Yeah. Well, this is neat. I mean, I can understand why you would use a centrifugal clutch in things like four-wheelers and snowmobiles, you know, stuff that has a single throttle, and you know, you just apply the throttle and it goes. It's kind of cool. I mean, the snowmobiles don't have a gear. They have the CVTs in them. I'm not exactly sure about a four-wheeler, if it's got a CVT or not, or if it uses gears. Never really drove four-wheelers. More into the snowmobiles, being from Canada, which sort of makes sense. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure, of course, you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It's kind of cool. A differential is a must, 100%. I think there's no question about it. You definitely need a differential. The centrifugal clutch, not necessarily on this. Maybe on something like a go-kart that's a little bit smaller. Although I'm sure there's ways to use centrifugal clutches to make cool stuff happen with transmissions. Like we could have clutches that are like in lines with gears, you know, in between each clutch. And you could have different gears engaged depending on how fast the clutch is. We might be able to make our own sort of CVT that kind of transfers between different gear ratios. I'm not exactly sure. I know a CVT itself, like in the pulley sense, doesn't exist in the game. So, you know, we could try something with some automatic transitions and centrifugal clutches. I'll have to see what kind of stuff exists in real life with centrifugal clutches and see how they could help us out. But yeah, definitely gonna have to make some automatic transmissions as well. And lots of cool stuff to play around with in this game. I think the next thing we're gonna do though is start looking at some suspension systems as well as steering setups. You know, my RC cars all have camber and they all have tow. And mind you, they're basically drift cars, so they kind of need both of those things. But you know, camber being the slope of your wheels and tow being like the in or out pointing of your wheels, it affects the way the car drives, and it would be cool to see how that works in Gearblocks as well. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Make sure, of course, you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time. I think destruction's still turned on, so we're just gonna send it. We're just gonna full send it. Oh yeah, it's so smooth in the air. Destruction wasn't on, but now it is. So, take two. Oh no.